many of you noticed something different when you walked in this morning? Anybody? Anybody looking in front of it this morning? We have adopted, as a church board, a new logo, a new mission statement, a new vision for here at Faith Venture Church. And I wanted to introduce it this morning and just talk to you just for a second about it. Our new logo, if you see these 3 blocks, they represent 3 different things. So if you'd open up your bulletin to the inside left, you'll see our new mission statement. And this is going to be the lens by which we do all ministry here at Faith Venture Church going forward. That those 3 blocks represent the fact that we are to equip, that we are to train, and then we are to send, reproducing disciples here in North Commerce City. And if you also notice those blocks, in the lower right-hand corner of those blocks, they're incomplete. There's still work that needs to be done in our church. There's still work that needs to be done in North Commerce City. There's still work that needs to be done in our world. So even though we are equipping, even though we are training, even though we are sending, there's always something more that we can be doing in this world. And I'll let you read down through those scriptures. This is one of the things that this morning, in this bulletin, that I wouldn't print out this morning. That everything was done, and I was getting ready for services this morning, and I'm like, oh, let me just print these off real quick. They weren't printed. It was just one of those things this morning. And then when I did print it, it got more grainy. I don't know if the printer just decided to say, hey, Jay, guess what? No, I'm not going to do it for you this morning. And so it just got more grainy and more grainy. And so what you see before you is going to be tweaked next week. The font is going to be bigger. It is going to be more clear next week. And there's going to be some changes. But I've been working with Alicia, our worship leader. You're going to see our logo popping up in a lot of different ways. And we're going to be changing some things here around the church. But here's what I need from you. I need your feedback. I can take your constructive criticism. It's okay. My shoulders are broad enough. I can take it. It's all right. So when you see things, as we start to roll these out, let me know what you think. If the font's too small, I know that. Okay? But if there's other things that you see, let me know. Because this is your church, and I want this bulletin, I want this announcement sheet to be for you. It's not for me. I know that. I live this, I breathe this, I drink this 24/7. But it's a way that we can communicate with you as well, so I need your feedback. If you look at the back of the bulletin, are the events and some of the things that we have coming up here at Faith Venture Church. If you look at that back, go ahead each week, and that is where you're going to find the way that we want to communicate with you, the things that are going to be happening here at FBC. How many of you last Sunday watched the Bible? How many of you guys watched that? What did you think? That was pretty well done. Just from a theological perspective, I think they did justice to it. I think they did a good job. My family and I, we sat down and we watched it together. I'm glad that I DVR'd it. It started about a half an hour late, so I could fast forward, do some of the scenes like Sodom and Gomorrah, and fast forward it because my little 3-year-old was watching it with us too. But if you read the Bible's graphic. There's violence in the Bible. So I think he did a pretty good job. I mean, they covered 5 books of the Bible in 2 hours. So I think they did a pretty good job. But if you look on Facebook this last week, or if you look at social media, if you talk to anybody this last week, people were talking about this series. I think they said 14, 15 million people watched that show last week. So what I want to do this morning is I want to encourage you to watch that tonight. Because people are going to be talking about it on Facebook tonight. If you follow me, or if you're friends with me on Facebook, you'll notice that I'm going to be talking about it on Facebook tonight. But then tomorrow at work, people are going to be talking about it. At school, people are going to be talking about it. In your friendships, in your families, people are going to be talking about it. And I want to use it as a conversation starter. When they ask you questions, be like, did that really happen? Yeah, it did. Let's talk about it. Let's go to the Bible. Let's read about it together. Let's see where that fits into the whole big story. And we can see how God loves us. But I want to encourage you to watch that tonight so you can be on the same page as your friends, your family, when you go to work tomorrow, when you're on social media as well. that I want you to watch that. Last thing, before we dive into the sermon this morning, today is our parents' potluck. And I've seen some of the food. I saw Hillary's pies on Facebook last night. They looked amazing. But we're going to have a parents' potluck today after service. And we're going to be eating the food in the cafeteria. And then we're going to have the parents' meeting in the library today. And our kids, there is childcare that's provided. But if you have a child here in the church, ages birth through 12th grade, you are invited to this informational meeting that we're going to have today. And it's going to be led by my wife, Janet, who is the new Children's Ministry Director here at FEC. And she's going to share some of the upcoming changes and some of the ideas and the thoughts that she has. But it is your children's ministry. It's your kids. And so she wants to talk with you about it, but also get your feedback. What do you think? What can we be improving? What could we be working on? She wants that interaction between us as leaders and then us as parents as well. So I'd encourage you, if you brought a dish today, great. If you didn't bring a dish, that's fine. We have plenty of food. Go ahead and please stay today for this meeting. I'm really excited just to see the way that God is really working in our children's ministry. If you look at the numbers, we have almost as many children most weeks as we do adults. This last week we're down just a hair, but most of the weeks it's about a pretty even 50-50 split. We have a lot of kids here at FEC, and I'm excited to see the way that the Lord is speaking to them through our team members, our children's ministry. So thank you. For the last 4 weeks here at FEC, we have been looking at the book of Exodus. We have been going through a series entitled A Rescue Story. The first week, for the first week of this sermon series, we looked at Exodus chapters 1 and 2. And when we were looking at Exodus 1 and 2, we saw this people group called the Israelites, who are the descendants of Abraham, of Isaac, and of Jacob. And they were slaves in this land called Egypt, and they were in bondage, and they were beaten, and they were cruelly oppressed by the Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, and his people. And so the people cried out to God. They said, God, this sucks. Essentially, that's what they said. If you read between the lines, it's right there. It says, this sucks. And so they cried out to God, and they said, God, rescue us. And he heard their cries at the end of chapter 2. And so in Exodus chapters 3 and 4, God provides a leader for the people of Israel. And he sends this man named Moses to go back to Pharaoh, to go back to the Israelites, and to say, I hear you. I'm going to rescue you. And he tells them, I am going to save you. And so Moses goes back, and he tells the people, and what do the people do? They doubted him. They said, we know that God said that he is going to do this, that he has heard our cries, that he has spoken through you, Moses, but we're not sure if God's going to be able to do that. And so in last week's sermon, when we looked at Exodus chapters 5 and chapter 6, we saw the distinct contrast between the people that doubt and the people that trust. And I encouraged you at the end of the sermon last week, how will you trust God in a mighty and powerful way? So I just want to ask you that question this morning. How did you do this week? When you look back at your week, did you trust God? Did you doubt God? Did you see him show up in a mighty and powerful way? Or did you doubt him? I pray that this next week for you will be a life-changing week. I pray that this sermon will be life-changing. I pray that over the next 30 minutes that the Lord would speak into your life in such a mighty and powerful way that it would change you, that you would trust him. You mind if I pray for you real quick before we dive in? Is that all right? I'm going to anyways. So, Heavenly Father, be with these people right now. Be with me. Speak into our lives. Help our ears to be open. Help our hearts to be softened so that we can hear your word. In your wonderful name. Amen. When I enlisted in the Air Force, back in 2001, in May of 2001. The first thing that they did when I enlisted is they shipped me off to basic training down at Lackland Air Force Base, which is in San Antonio, Texas. And so I left with a group of guys from Cleveland, Ohio. We got up about 4 o'clock that morning. Actually, I think we had to be at 3:45, if I remember right. It was really early. 3:45, and we got to the station, and then they shipped us all down to San Antonio, Texas. And we got down there. We were the last group to arrive at our unit. And we got into San Antonio about 2 o'clock the next morning. So we had been up for almost 24 hours. And I don't know about you, but before I went into the military, the only thing that I knew about basic training was from watching the movie Full Metal Jacket. Like, that's what I was expecting when I got down there to basic, that's what life was going to be like for me for the next 6-7 weeks, was Full Metal Jacket. And in some ways, that was a pretty accurate depiction. Actually, Phil can probably attest that. He was in the Marines. But when I got down there, I was nervous. I was scared. I had no idea what was going to happen. So adrenaline was pumping. I was nervous. I was scared. I was afraid. I had been up for 24 hours. And we got there at 2 o'clock in the morning. And as soon as we pulled up, they said, all right, everybody off the bus. So I grabbed my bags. And I got off, and they arranged us in rows. There was about 40 to 50 guys. And we're holding all of our stuff in our bags in our hands. We're standing there at attention, and we're holding all of our stuff, and we're nervous, we're scared. And we got these instructors yelling at us. We got one guy on one side telling us to do something. The guy on the other side is telling us to do the opposite. And you don't know what to do, and you're standing there scared. And finally, they tell us, go ahead and put your bags down. So we're holding our bags, and we're in this open courtyard, and we drop our bags. And it's quiet at this time of night, at 2 o'clock in the morning. And as soon as we drop the bags in that hard concrete, it makes this loud thud. And then they start screaming at us. They said, we didn't tell you to drop your bags, we told you to put them down. Everybody pick them back up. So we pick our bags back up. And just when we think that our arms are about to fall off from holding these bags, they say, put it back down. So we drop them. And then it makes this loud crash. It makes this loud sound again. They scream at us again, tell us to pick them back up. And it begins this cycle, this process that went on. Some of us got it. Some of us knew what we were supposed to be doing. We finally understand they just want us to put them down and not make a sound. But there was that one guy in the back. He just kept dropping his bags and dropping his bags. 2 hours. We stood there picking up our bags, holding our bags, dropping our bags, getting screamed at. 2 hours. It kept going and going and going. And I tell you what, if I do still harbor a little bit of unforgiveness towards that guy, if I ever find out who that guy was who kept dropping his bag in the back, we're going to have a couple of words. But there was a couple people in our group, in our flight, in our unit, who got it right away. They understood what that message was that the instructors were trying to get across. And then there were some who it took them quite a while to understand what they had to do. Now I know when you look at those people who were in my flight, in my group, that there were 2 types of people. There were those who got it, and there were those who took a long time to get it. And I know that none of you are in that second group, right? None of you are slow to learn, right? Patsy's the only honest person this morning. None of you are stubborn, right? None of you are stuck in your ways, right? None of you continue to do something even though you know it's a wrong thing, but you continue to do it because you thought as a person you don't want to admit that you were wrong, right? None of you are like that, are you? As we continue our series in the book of Exodus, and we continue the series entitled The Rescue Story, there is a man that pops up in this beginning chapters of Exodus that is the epitome of stubbornness. That when you look at this story, this is a person who didn't care about how his actions affected anybody else. It was all about him. This is that guy that was standing in the back of my flight who just kept dropping his bags because he could. This was that guy in Exodus chapter 7 that we're going to be looking at this morning. If you have your Bibles, go ahead and open them up to Exodus chapter 7. We're going to be beginning at verse 1. And we're going to look at this person who is the epitome of stubbornness. Exodus chapter 7, beginning at verse 1. And it says this. And the Lord said to Moses, "See, I have made you like God to Pharaoh, and your brother Aaron shall be your prophet. You shall speak all that I command you, and your brother Aaron shall tell Pharaoh to let the people of Israel go out of his land. But I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and though I multiply my signs, and wonders in the land of Egypt, Pharaoh will not listen to you. Then I will lay my hand on Egypt and bring my hosts, my people, the children of Israel, out of the land of Egypt by great acts of judgment. The Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord, when I stretch out my hand against Egypt and I bring out the people of Israel from among them." God promised that Moses would be the person who would lead his people out of Egypt into the land that was promised to them. But there was a catch. There was a hitch. The people of Egypt weren't going to just let the Israelites go. They were their slaves. They were the ones who their entire economy was based off of the work that the Israelites did. So when Moses was standing before Pharaoh, like Charlton Heston was standing before the Pharaoh, and he says, "Let my people go," what did Pharaoh say? Did he say yes? You just let them go? No. Yul Brynner, as Pharaoh, said, "No. I'm not going to let these people go. Actually, I'm going to make things more difficult for you and for your lives." When we look at these first couple verses of Exodus chapter 7, we see a couple things. The first thing is the fact that God knew in His infinite wisdom, in His infinite majesty, He knew the way that Pharaoh was going to respond. He knew the way that Pharaoh thought. He knew the way that Pharaoh acted. He knew the way that Pharaoh thought about himself. And he knew that when Moses went to Pharaoh and said, "Let my people go," he knew the way that Pharaoh was going to respond. He knew that Pharaoh was going to say no. And that it's going to take a lot of work in order to let Pharaoh know, "Man, I really do need to let these people go. That the Lord's will is going to be done. I just need to get on board with it." And we'll see as we start to read through these next couple chapters of Exodus that the Lord begins to multiply His signs and His wonders. Just like emerald, He takes it up another notch. And then He takes it up another notch, and He takes it up another notch. But Pharaoh doesn't get it. And so the Lord starts down here. And He begins to work in Pharaoh's lives and in the work of the Egyptians. But they don't get it. And then the Lord takes it up another notch, to another plague, to another miraculous work of the Lord in their lives, and they don't get it. And it goes on, and it goes on, and it goes on. Well, the first of these begins in 7:14. So in Exodus chapter 7, verse 14. Let's read the first way that the Lord tries to get the attention of Pharaoh. And it says, "Then the Lord said to Moses, Pharaoh's heart is hardened." Means he's stubborn. He won't listen. He refuses to let the people go, which is what I just said. "Go to Pharaoh in the morning as he is going out to the water. Stand on the bank of the Nile to meet him." That's the life-giving water. That is the main body of water that provides life to all of the Egyptian nation. "And take in your hand the staff that turned into a serpent. And you shall say to him, 'The Lord, the God of the Hebrews, sent me to you, saying, Let my people go, that they may serve me in the wilderness. But so far you have not obeyed. Thus says the Lord, by this you shall know that I am the Lord. Behold, with the staff that is in my hand, I will strike the water that is the Nile, and it shall turn into blood. The fish in the Nile shall die, and the Nile will stink, and the Egyptians will grow weary of drinking water from the Nile. And the Lord said to Moses, Say to Aaron, Take your staff and stretch out your hand over the waters of Egypt, over their rivers, their canals, and their ponds, and their pools of water, so that they may become blood. And there shall be blood throughout all the land of Egypt, even in the vessels of wood and in the vessels of stone. Moses and Aaron did as the Lord commanded. In the sight of Pharaoh, in the sight of his servants, he lifted up his staff, and he struck the water in the Nile, and all the water in the Nile turned into blood. And the fish of the Nile died, and the Nile stank, and so the Egyptians could not drink water from the Nile. There was blood throughout all the land of Egypt. When you look at this passage, when you look at this first plague, it's the beginning of a series of events where the Lord tries to get a hold of Pharaoh. And he tries to say, hey, Pharaoh, look at what I can do. Look how powerful I am. Pharaoh, I am showing you. I'm trying to get your attention. I need you to listen. I need you to let my people go. And Pharaoh sees it. And yet he still does not relent. He still does not let the people of Israel go. So in this first plague, in the fact that the Lord turned the water of the Nile into blood, Moses went back before the Pharaoh and he said, okay, God just turned all of your water into blood. Will you let my people go? And Pharaoh says, no. I won't let you go. And so that phrase that's in our vernacular, that someone is as stubborn as a mule, should actually be changed to stubborn as a Pharaoh. Because as we read through this, the Lord takes it up another notch. And as we read in the beginning of the second half of chapter 7, and then into verse 8, there's a second plague, where God sends frogs over the land of Egypt. Now I'm not talking one frog, 2 frogs. I'm not talking 100 frogs. I'm talking thousands of frogs. Over your chairs, on top of your head, in your ovens, in your cars, in your chariot. Wherever they were, there were frogs. And after that, Moses went before the Pharaoh and he said, okay, do you see what the Lord can do? Will you let my people go? Pharaoh says, no. So then the Lord sends the next plague, and this third plague, in the second half of chapter 8, is a plague of gnats. Now, how many of you are from the Midwest or from back east? So you know what gnats are. If you're in Colorado, you have no clue what they're like back east. And these gnats, they're like in swarms. And it's kind of like a blackness that's hovering over a water or a little bit. They're nasty. They're gross. If you walk through them, that's that person, it's like they're swatting at a spider web, and they're just like batting at all of these gnats. Well, think about that. Now think about the fact that they are everywhere. That it's not just a swarm, but they're there in your teeth. They're in your nose, they're in your eyes, they're in your ears. They're there when you go to sleep at night. They're there in the morning when you wake up. And so Moses appears before Pharaoh, and he says, look at what the Lord has done. Will you let my people go? And Pharaoh says no. And it was after this third plague that Pharaoh's advisors, that his magicians, that the people who he trusted in his life, they come up to him, and they say, Pharaoh, dude, do you not know that this is God doing this? And Pharaoh says, I don't care. That I will not let the people of Israel go. So Pharaoh has people in his life who he trusts to speak the truth, the hard truth, the difficult truth. And he won't let them go. How grateful we should be when we have those people in our life who will speak that hard truth. That they will say the difficult thing. That when they are stepped outside of our situation, they look back at our lives and they say, Jay, I don't know if you know this, but that's God speaking to you right now. That those things that are going on in your life, there's a reason for it. And because they're removed from the situation, because they care about me, they have the ability to speak into my life. Now, when I first joined the Air Force, or after a while after I joined the Air Force, I deployed. And I went over to the desert right when the war kicked off in 2003. And while I was there, I met this guy who we struck up a friendship immediately. We saw a lot of things when we were over there, when we were deployed together. But we became very, very close friends. For the last 10 years, since my deployment, he and I have talked on the phone pretty much about every single day. We interact with each other every single day. We go golfing together, we hang out together, we talk a lot, we know everything about our families. We're very, very close friends. Well, for about the last 2 or 3 years, this friend has developed a substance abuse problem. And he's begun to depend more and more on the substance in order to get him through his day. That when he goes home at night, he starts to kind of dull life with this substance. And it's affected him. And he's never been a mean person when he's under the effects of this. It's just always been there. It's always been present for the last couple of years in our relationship. Well, this last Friday, just 2 days ago, he and I were chatting. And he was under the effects of this substance, of this drug. And he started to say some hurtful things to me. He started to say some mean things to me that he's never done before. And it hurt me. And it cut me. And so I told him, I don't want to talk to you when you're like this. That this is affecting you in a way that you don't quite understand. And he got really mad. And he got really angry. And he said, if you care about our friendship, you'll continue to talk to me right now. And I said, I care enough about our relationship that I'm not going to talk to you. And so I said, when you sober up tomorrow, we're going to talk. And we're going to discuss some of the hurtful things that you said tonight. And I'm not going to do it while you're under the effects of this. And it wasn't an easy conversation. It wasn't something that I enjoyed doing. But because of the fact that we had this long relationship and we were talking almost every single day, I called him on Saturday morning. He didn't answer his phone. Tried to talk to him all day long. I called him probably 10 times yesterday. Never picked up. Never texted back. Never emailed back. I might lose my friendship. Someone who I've talked to every single day for over 10 years. Because of the fact that I spoke the hard truth to my friend. And I know that he needed to hear it, but it wasn't easy. I know that when I look in Exodus at the story of the Egyptian advisors to Pharaoh, that it probably wasn't easy for them to say to him, this is God, you need to let these people go. They probably feared for their lives. I mean, they're speaking to a man who thought he was God. And they said, you need to let them go. And he said, no, I won't let them go. So we continue in this series of plagues, and God says, all right, we're going to take this to the next level. And so God sends the fourth plague. In Exodus chapter 8, he sends flies. Moses goes before Pharaoh. Pharaoh says no. We go to the fifth plague, the death of the livestock, the death of the animals. Pharaoh says no. Then we have a plague of boils, nasty lesions on the skin that are very painful. Pharaoh stays stubborn. He won't relent. He won't let them go. Then we get to the seventh plague. And everything that was not decimated in the previous plagues is beaten down with hail. I'm talking huge hail. That it kills animals. It beats down homes. It knocks out all of their fields. It knocks out all of their crops. And it is after the seventh plague that Pharaoh says, well, it appears that Pharaoh says, you can go. That I see that the Lord is working, and I'm going to let you go. So look what happens in Exodus chapter 9. Skip over a page. Exodus chapter 9, beginning at verse 27. Watch what Pharaoh says, and watch what he does. In 9:27. Then Pharaoh sent and called Moses and Aaron to them. This time I have sinned. The Lord is in the right, and I and my people are in the wrong. It appears like he's penitent. Like he's asking for forgiveness. Plead with the Lord, for there has been enough of God's thunder and hail. I will let you go, and you shall stay no longer. Moses said to him, as soon as I have gone out of the city, I will stretch out my hands to the Lord. The thunder will cease, and there will be no more hail, so that you may know that the earth is the Lord's. But as for you and your servants, I know that you do not yet fear the Lord. And then it continues in 31 and 32, and it tells you kind of the state that's where they were at. Continuing in verse 33, so Moses went out of the city from Pharaoh and stretched out his hands to the Lord, and the thunder and the hail ceased, and the rain no longer poured upon the earth. what happens? There's that word but. There at the beginning of verse 34. But when Pharaoh saw that the rain and the hail and the thunder had ceased, he sinned yet again. And he did not let the people of Israel go as the Lord had spoken through Moses. Two things happen here in this passage. Number one, Pharaoh appeared like he changed. He said all the right things. He looked the right way. But he didn't change. And that was the second thing, is that he went right back to the way that he had always done after all of the previous 6 plagues. Remember last week when I asked you that question, what does your life look like in between Sundays? It's easy when we're sitting here as a group and we worship the Lord. It's easy amongst Christians to listen to a sermon. It's easy to give in the offering when you're looking around and everybody else is doing it. But what does it look like when you go back to your work on Monday? What's it look like when you go back to your school? What does it look like when you go back to your families, to your friends, on Facebook? What does it look like Monday through Saturday? See, Pharaoh knew all the right things to say. He knew that he should show up at 9:35 so he could grab his donut and be in place by 9:40. He knew that he should sing all 4 songs. He knew he should raise his hand. Sometimes he'd get a little carried away and he'd raise them both during the singing. He knew that he should give his tithes and his offerings. Pharaoh knew that he should listen to the sermon attentively and even take notes. Pharaoh knew the way that he should look, the way that he should act. But it didn't penetrate his heart. And then he said all the right things, he looked the right way. And on Sundays, he appeared really, really good. But when he went back to his life on Monday, he didn't show the integrity that is required of one who truly follows God with their whole heart, with their whole being. If we define integrity as doing what is right even when nobody is looking, Pharaoh failed to live up to that level of expectation that God requires of us in our lives. And so again, Pharaoh went back and he said, no, actually I'm not going to let you go. After the Lord relented, he said no. So the Lord went again and he sent the 8th plague, which was locust. So anything that was left after the hail, the locust devoured. Pharaoh said no. Then the Lord sent the 9th plague, and that was darkness, this permeating, dark presence. Pharaoh said no. Soon, the Lord was about to send a final plague. And this is the one that finally, after this 10th plague, that Pharaoh relented. And he let the people go. I want you to think about something. I want you to put something in your mind right now. What is it in your life that you hold the most dear? What is it in your life that you care about the absolute most? That if this thing in your life were to go away, that you would be ruined. That you would be beside yourself. What is that one thing? I want you to keep it in your mind. For Pharaoh, that one thing in his life was his family. That one thing that Pharaoh held the most dear in his life was his son. Was his firstborn son, his heir. The one who was going to carry on the family name, carry on the family tradition, carry on the family's ruling in Egypt. That is what Pharaoh held the most dear. God was trying to get Pharaoh's attention after the first plague, the second plague, the third plague, the fourth plague, the fifth plague, so on and so forth. And we finally get to the 10th plague. And the Lord hits Pharaoh in the way that only the Lord can hit him. And he attacks the thing that Pharaoh held the most dear. When we look together at chapter 12, verse 29, watch what happens in this 10th and final plague. At midnight, the Lord struck down all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh, who he held most dear, who sat on his throne, to the firstborn of the captive who was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of the livestock. And Pharaoh rose up in the night, he and all of his servants and all of the Egyptians. And there was a great cry in Egypt, but there was not a house where someone was not dead. Then he summoned Moses and Aaron by night. Immediately. He didn't wait till morning. He said, you get him in front of me right now and you can talk to him. And so he summoned him by night. He said, up, go out from among my people, both you and the people of Israel, and go serve the Lord as you have said. Take your flocks, take your herds, and you have said, and be gone and blessed, and get out of here. I don't want to do anything more. I don't want anything to do with you people anymore. Go. Get out of my presence. It took 10 plagues in order for Pharaoh to hear the way that the Lord was speaking to him. It took 10 plagues for the Lord to finally get the attention of Pharaoh. The Lord was speaking to Pharaoh in that first plague, and he didn't listen. When you look at your life right now, how is the Lord speaking to you? Is he speaking to you? Is he in the first plague? Is he in the second plague? Is he in the third one? Are you getting close to that 10th plague? To the Lord affecting that which you hold the most dear? One of my favorite stories in the Bible is the story of Elijah. And Elijah is one of the prophets of Israel. This is after they have been rescued. I'm going to let you in on a secret. They do get rescued. And he is a prophet of Israel. And the Lord comes to him, and the Lord speaks to him. And the Lord speaks to Elijah in a way with beautiful imagery, but he does it in such a way that you would not expect. He does it in a way that he speaks to us in our lives today. So let's look together at 1 Kings chapter 19. And starting in verse 11, just 2 quick verses. And he said, this is the angel of the Lord speaking to Elijah. And he said, go and stand on the mount before the Lord. And behold, the Lord passed by, and a great and a strong wind tore the mountains and broke in pieces the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord wasn't in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake. But the Lord wasn't in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, there was a fire. But the Lord wasn't in the fire. And after the fire, the sound of a low whisper. Look at the way that the Lord chose to spoke to Elijah. Look at the way the Lord chose to speak to Pharaoh. He started off in a low whisper. He started off at the very lowest level. And he says, I want to speak to you. Pharaoh, I got something for you. Elijah, I got something for you. I'm trying to talk to you. I'm trying to get your attention. Will you listen to me here? And they both said no. And then it got ramped up, and it got ramped up, and it got ramped up, and finally it took 10 plagues before Pharaoh finally got it. When we look at our lives, that's the exact same way that the Lord talks to us this morning. He talks to us in that low whisper. He's trying to get your attention this morning if you would just listen to him. Think back to that story at the very beginning, when I was talking about my time in basic training. When I was standing there with my bags, and they kept yelling at us, and they said, put your bags down, and someone would drop them. We had to pick them back up again. And there were those two groups of guys. There was the group that got it right away and listened to the message that the instructors were giving them. And then there was that group of people who it took them multiple times in order to finally get what that message that they were trying to give them. When you look at your life, which group are you in? Are you that first group that understands what the instructors are saying? Are you that group of people who listens after the first plague? Or are you that group of people who is stubborn? Are you in that second group, those people who are sullen, those people who are depressed, those people who are hard-hearted, who will not listen when the Lord speaks to you, and you keep throwing your bags down? Are you that group of people who it takes 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 plagues finally get it. I don't know about you, but I want to be in that first group. That I want to listen to the Lord when He's speaking to me, because I don't want to get to that 10th plague. What is the Lord saying to you this morning? If He is speaking to you, are you listening? Let's pray.